Okay, fantastic. Now I can officially get started. To start, I would like to acknowledge that I live and work on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people as part of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I also extend those respects to any First Nations people that may be with us on the session today. Um, Today in this webinar, we're going to cover off on a few things. Actually get my slides to work. There we go. So I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction into what the Green Gown Awards actually are, as well as talking through the rules of the awards. So there are some rules that we do need to adhere to. The Green Gown Awards are part of a global awards scheme. So ACS does run the Australasian component, but we do need to make sure that we adhere to the overall rules of the awards. So we'll be going through those today. Then I'm going to be talking about the judging panel. So these are the people that review all of the applications within the awards. I'm going to take you through an in-depth look at what is actually involved in the judging process. So you can hopefully use that when you reflect on how to put your applications together. And then I'm going to let you know, in general, some of the things that judges love when looking at their applications, some things that also they find very frustrating. And with that, I'll give you some tips to put in your own application that you're putting together. And then lastly, we're joined by Corey Peterson from the University of Tasmania, who is going to provide some expert advice from his perspective. UTAS are the most highly awarded institution within the regional Green Gown Awards. So they've certainly got a lot of expertise when it comes to putting award-winning applications together. So Corey will be jumping in at the end there. I will keep an eye on questions as we go through, but I will largely responding to questions at the end of the session. So please do pop them through in chat and we'll come back to them when I go through the PowerPoint slides. Okie dokie. So the Green Gown Awards Australasia officially launched in 2010 in our region, which means that they have been recognising and rewarding sustainability excellence. This is their 14th year now, so 13 years. We have been running this previously. In that time, we have acknowledged 112 winners, and 70 highly commended institutions as well. And that represents 52 unique institutions. And that includes both universities and TAFE and polytechnics, so Institutes of Technology and Polytechnics. As I mentioned earlier, the Regional Green Gown Awards are administered by ACS, but we do deliver these awards as part of a global partnership, which is led by the EAUC in the United Kingdom. So the EAUC originally created the Green Gowns a few years before we partnered with them to launch a regional component of that. And it's with that partnership between ACS and the EAUC that the International Green Gown Awards were formed in 2013. So the international awards, you may have heard about them. The finalists were announced quite recently. They do run separately to the regional Australasian awards, but they are linked. Currently, the only entry point for Australasian institutions into the international awards is through our regional awards. Basically, what happens is all of the winners from the regional awards, so that includes from Australasia, from the UK and Ireland, and from France and French-speaking countries who all have their own regional component. All of our winners go forward as automatic finalists into those regional awards. And that's what they were originally set up to do. When we first founded them in 2013, they were a way to basically get all of the winners from the various regions together, and they would compete for the international title. We've seen the international awards grow over the years, though, and now they also do provide a platform for institutions that don't have their own regional award scheme to get recognition, and they can do that with direct application into the international awards. But for us, though, for institutions in Australia, New Zealand, and anywhere within Australasia, they must submit to the regional awards to get into the international ones. Okie dokie. Since the awards were first launched in 2010, we have had over 29 different categories available over that time frame. So that means each year we do update the categories in order to make sure that we are best representing innovation and excellence for sustainability in the sector. So across those 29 categories, many of them have been retired over the years, or some of them have been updated and gone through name changes. The applications that we have open this year, only a couple of them have been as part of the lineup for the whole 14-year history. So Sustainability Institution of the Year, which was formerly known as Continuous Improvement Institutional Change, and student engagement. So those two have been running for the entire history of the award. Student engagement has gone through a number of name changes over the years. Learning, teaching and skills is also one of our oldest categories that came in year 2 of our awards. From the current lineup, there are 2 brand new categories in the mix this year, and that's diversity, equity and inclusion in sustainability and nature positive. So these are brand new. We haven't had them in our region, and they also joined the international lineup straight away. In order for categories to be valid in the international awards, all of the regionals must also have those categories. So you'll see most of our categories are now international categories as well. The only one in there that's not are the individual categories, and we have leading for the circular economy. Leading for the circular economy is a good example of some categories are only offered biannually, so that means we only offer them every second year. And this is just to reflect that we do have a restricted number of institutions within our regional awards that can submit to various categories every year. So we do offer some of them every second year just to make sure that we have enough applications to make them run. So this year we have leading the circular economy, which returns. We haven't had that in there since 2001. And that swapped out with powerful partnerships, which we had last year. So we'll do that swap again next year. Powerful partnerships will come into play next year, and leading the circular economy will be on a break. All of the specific criteria for these categories are available on our website. Please do read them. That is the first step to putting together a really good application, is to make sure you read and understand the category criteria that you are submitting to. Okay, so a couple of rules to make sure that you've got that you're across before submitting. First and foremost is eligibility. So any tertiary education institution across Australasia can submit to the regional awards. So that includes universities, TAFE, institutes of polytechnic, institutes of technology, as well as registered training organisations. So if you are from an RTO, then you are eligible to submit to the awards. There are instances where third-party organisations and multi-partner teams, so this is sort of groups of institutions, can submit. But in that instance, there does need to be an institutional leader that is nominated that is going to lead on communications with putting the submission through. If you need clarification on any of this, you can always reach out to us and double check with us as well. All applications that come through must be received on an official application form, which are available for download on our website. There are 2 forms that you can access: an organisational form for the organisational categories and an individual form for the individual categories. Otherwise, all of the applications do need to be submitted on the same form. They are all exactly the same. The only difference is if you are submitting to Sustainability Institution of the Year, in which case you are allowed an extra page allocation in the length of your application. So there's no specific word limits in regards to putting the applications together, but there is a limit on the overall number of pages that you can submit, and that is all very clearly outlined on the application forms themselves. So you must submit through the application form in Word format, and that needs to be uploaded through the online submission portal on the Green Gown Awards website. There is no limit to the number of applications an organisation could submit to each category. So if you wanted to, you could submit 10 applications to one category in any given year. They would obviously need to represent individual initiatives, but we have no limits whatsoever. Obviously, the more you put in a particular category, the more you are competing with yourself. We have had that happen in some instances where an institution will submit multiple projects or initiatives into the same category in a given year, so that's totally fine. You can also submit the same project or initiative into multiple categories in a given year. So you might want to submit a project to climate action as well as benefiting society. You can completely do that, that's fine. However, you do need to submit a separate application form for each category that you are applying to. And we really can't stress this enough. You do need to tailor the application for the category you are submitting to. It's not okay to write one application and then submit it in multiple categories without making any changes. The judges are allocated to a particular category, so you'll have one group of judges reviewing one category and a completely separate group of judges reviewing a different category, and they have no crossover or interaction between them. So if you have not tailored your application for any given category, the judges will be able to tell fairly easily. What also happens is if you do submit that project to multiple categories, it will be reviewed at stage 1, but it will only progress as a finalist in one of those categories, and it will move forward in the one that it has the best chance of succeeding in. So I'll talk about this a little bit later when I go through the judging process, but just to clarify that right up the top, you can submit the same project to multiple categories in a given year, but if it is successful as a finalist, it will only go forward in one category. We also have something called the 2-year rule in the Green Gown Awards. So this means that if you are awarded a win in any given year, you cannot resubmit that project or initiative to the awards for 2 years. So there is a cooling period once you do get an award before you can resubmit it. If you do want to resubmit after that 2-year period, you certainly can, but it's very strongly recommended that you can demonstrate further progress and improvement since you were last awarded a win. We used to apply this rule to highly commendeds as well. However, a few years ago, we removed this restriction. So if you are awarded highly commended, you can resubmit that application in the next year and potentially go on to win. This came up because it was a real difficult point for judges to want to award highly commendeds, and then sort of that would stop an initiative from being resubmitted in the next year to come on as a win. So now that 2-year rule only does apply to winners. If you submit in any given year and you don't win, so if you're non-successful, you can resubmit that application in the next year. You're not precluded from submitting if you were unsuccessful in any given year. But if you do that, we really strongly recommend that you take the feedback you have received from judges on board before submitting again. A couple of other notes on rules. It is your responsibility to submit in the appropriate category. If you submit under, and we don't think it's the right category, we will not make that change for you. You will go forward and be judged in the category that you have applied for. So make sure you do review those category criteria really carefully before submitting. You'll also be asked to accept all of the conditions of entry when you submit your application. These are all outlined on our website. I do strongly recommend you go through and read those as well. And another thing that you'll be asked when you're putting your submission through is, have you read the guidance notes for participants? This is a document that's available on the How to Enter page, and it contains so much information around the awards. Basically, everything I'm covering in this session today is covered within the guidance notes for participants, as well as more information on the generic criteria that judges will use when assessing applications, as well as what's expected from your application form. So there are a number of different sections that you need to complete in an application form. So the guidance notes for participants tells you what's expected, what type of content and information you need to provide in those areas. So please do make sure you read both that document and the conditions of entry. They're there to help you make sure that you are putting your best application forward. The other thing to do is we do ask that all of our finalists, so those that progress through to stage 2, put together a short case study video around their project and initiative. This is to help ensure that the ethos of the awards are maintained, and the ethos is that the lessons and examples of best practice sustainability are shared within the sector and beyond. So do keep that in mind. We removed the requirement for these to be mandatory. They did used to be mandatory. Over COVID, we took that away as a requirement, but we really do strongly recommend you put them together. They don't have to be high production affairs. It's really amazing what you can produce with a smartphone and free editing software these days. So please do keep that in mind if you're going to progress through, or hopefully you will progress through as a finalist, but that's something that we do really recommend. And the international award finalists need that as well. So if you progress forward as an international finalist, that's something you'll need. Regardless of your video status, though, we will still produce a written case study for you as a finalist, and that will go up on our website. But we know that we get a lot better uptake and engagement with short, informative videos, which is why we do encourage those. So now we're going to talk about judges who can actually be a judge within the Green Gown Awards. So the judging panel is made up of an independent group of representatives from sector support organisations, government and industry organisations. We do have experts that do come from the university sector, although we do try to limit these as much as possible to avoid conflicts of interests. But basically, all the judges that we get within the awards are representative from organisations that are experts in a field of sustainability, and we do try to match them up to the categories as closely as possible. And the entire integrity of the Green Gown Awards rests on the independence of our judges. So we really make sure that we vet any potential conflicts of interests as part of the process. In regards to the role of both the ACTS staff and ACTS board in Green Gown Award judging, all of the judging that takes place is done with at least one ACTS member of staff. However, we do not actively judge. Our role is to basically moderate the process and make sure that the rules of the awards are maintained, that there is consistency across the various different judging groups, because they do not overlap and cross over with each other, and also to ensure that all of the judges actually come to a decision. We did trial it one year where we didn't have an ACTS representative with each of the judging groups to make sure that they came to a decision. And sure enough, we had some judging groups that just couldn't decide. So that's why we're there. We make sure that they, in one way or another, they do come to a decision. The ACTS board, on the other hand, so the board is a group of voluntary sustainability practitioners and experts that guide on the strategic direction of ACTS. They are strictly excluded from all Green Gown Award business. So the only input that our board members get in regards to the Green Gown Awards is feedback on the annual category selection. In regards to the process themselves, they cannot judge. They cannot be nominated for the individual awards. They get absolutely no insider information or support from ACTS staff, and many of our ACTS board are active applicants within the Green Gown Awards. So just to be very clear on that, and the judges are also not aware of any board member affiliations with the submissions that they're reviewing. The other thing I wanted to say around the judges that volunteer their time is that it's a really difficult job for them. Not because of the work involved, although it can be substantial for some of our more popular categories, but it's really hard because every application that we receive to these awards represents someone's hard work. It represents an institution's efforts to drive and lead for sustainability. It represents someone's time to pull together and write a really comprehensive application. Sometimes that's one person, or sometimes that's a whole team of people. So we do acknowledge and recognise that, and the judges do as well. It's very, very rare, and I can only honestly think of one or two instances across the last 13 years where the judges question, should this application have been submitted? So they're all worthy of recognition and acknowledgement, but ultimately this is an awards scheme and a winner must be chosen. So I just thought I'd highlight that. The judges really do struggle with this in some instances, but they have to select a winner, and sometimes they really don't want to. They want to give everybody an award. But how do we do that? So Green Gown Awards is split into 2 stages. Stage 1, which is currently open for submissions. This is the open entry point. So this is where you can submit an application to any of the categories that we have open this year. In order to put your stage 1 application together, you need to complete the application form that we talked about earlier. You also do need to supply some marketing material, and this is information that we will use should your application progress as a finalist. As part of that, we ask you to come up with a short and catchy descriptive name for your project. This is to help it stand out from the crowd, but it really helps us with the communications that we put together around the awards and disseminating best practice. So this is a personal request from me, from anybody that's watching this. A short descriptive title is exactly what we say. We don't want a paragraph for your title. Sometimes they do come through. So do try and keep that in mind. 10 words or less is a good guide. And we've got this wonderful AI technology that's out. This will be the first year, I think, where we've had AI available for people to consider with helping putting their award submissions together. And if that's not on your radar, put it on your radar. You know, things like ChatGPT are an excellent tool to help you put things like this together. I could probably do a whole session on how you can do an award submission using AI. But even just in the instance of coming up with a title, you know, you could put your project overview into a ChatGPT and say, give me 10 catchy titles in 10 words or less, and it will split them out. And you can keep doing that until you get something you like. So just one little example of how you can use AI to help with your award submission. Please don't write your whole award submission with AI. It will not work. It's not how you use a tool like that, but certainly there are elements that would be very helpful. So once you submit the deadline for stage 1, then we will send that out to all of the judges, and they go into stage 1 judging. So what happens with that is that the judges are sent your application forms, and they are given a period of time to review and initially score those applications. And they do that with a scorecard template that we send them. So this scorecard template is to help them initially rank the applications, because what they have to do at stage 1 judging is create a short list of finalists. So this is where they review all applications and decide which ones they want to see progress as finalists, which ones do they want to see back again at stage 2, where they will need to select a winner. The scorecard that we send them is just a guide to help them rank institutions or initiatives initially. And that guide is set up in exactly the same way as your application form is set up. So we get them to score the application according to the various sections of your application form. So if you were thinking about just not answering a section in your application form, maybe this will provide some guidance as to why it's really important to try and address all of the areas within that form. If you cannot, for whatever reason your project or initiative is not relevant to an area in the form, that's okay. It's not going to mean that you're out of contention, but just to show you, this is how we do get the judges to initially rank those submissions. So what they do that in their pre-read, and then we bring all of the judges for your category together for an initial stage 1 judging meeting. And as a group, they discuss their initial rankings, and they collectively decide on a short list of finalists. So these are the applications that will progress through to stage 2. And not all applications do progress. Some of them will end at stage 1. The other thing that judges do at this stage is they will put together a list of questions. And this is how you will, this is your part in stage 2. So once you get named as a finalist and move on to stage 2, you need to complete the second part of your application form, which is responding to the judges' questions. There is a section in there where you can also provide an update. There is a period of several months between stage 1 and stage 2 where your initiative may have progressed. Maybe you've got some new data or new information. So there is an opportunity for you to provide an update in there as well as respond to the judges' questions. At this stage, you'll be named as a finalist, so it's time for you to start thinking about producing your video as well. So you have about a month to respond to that, and then we come back to stage 2 judging. So again, we go through the same process with our judges. It's the same panel between stage 1 and stage 2. They are resent your application forms, which now contain the responses to their questions. And then they are asked to do an updated ranking. So they do rank your submission based on the responses that you give them. And then they bring that information back to their final judging meeting. And it's at this judging meeting where they make the decision on who is going to be awarded winner, and potentially if they are going to award any highly commended. They are not required. It is completely up to the judge's discretion as to whether they award any highly commended, but we do have a limit on 2, and that does depend on how many applications are made finalist in any given category. So once the judges come to that decision, they also use the remaining time in that judging meeting to compile any feedback for applicants. So one thing that is really useful, I think, with the Green Gown Awards is that we do provide judges feedback to all applicants, regardless of where you finish within the award. So if you only progress to stage 1, you'll still get feedback. If you go to stage 2 as a finalist, but you don't get awarded winner or highly commended, you'll still get feedback. So some things that judges love to see when they are reviewing applications. Innovation first and foremost. So we are an award scheme for rewarding excellence and sustainability. So they love to see new and innovative things that haven't been done before. However, a warning, if you are going to make any claims within your submission around being the first to do something, please make sure that you actually are. We have had applications come through where institutions have claimed to be the first of something, and they simply haven't, whether it's just through not doing the research or not being aware of what's happening elsewhere. And the judges will pretty easily pick up on that. If you're unsure, particularly around making first claims, maybe you just want to put some caveats on it. You could say, you know, the first in our state or the first in our country or the first institution. So be careful with broad sweeping statements of we are the first to do something. They also love things that are replicable or scalable. The ethos within the Green Gown Awards is to promote and support best practice within sustainability. So if you are doing something that other institutions could then easily take your project as a case study and then roll that out at their own institution, then they love to see that. Any applications that have made efforts to already support replication or scalability are also very highly favoured. Judges also love a well-written application, and they really don't like a poorly written application. If a judge has to struggle to make sense of what you've written, you're already fighting an uphill battle with being successful within the awards. So think about flow and readability with your application. Try and create a narrative with the various section areas that you have. Also, judges shouldn't have to really dig deep through lots of information to try and pick out your key points. You really want to highlight that and make it easy for them to see that. Of all the feedback that we get, that the judges compile, what is really consistent in winning applications is feedback that says things like high impact, replicability, innovative, and well written. So do take that into consideration. The way that the application form is structured too is that you have an overview section. So this is one of the first things that judges will read. Really try and make that overview section pop as best you can. Judges have a lot of content to read. Our application forms are quite lengthy, so you want to make sure that you've got their attention right from the get-go. Another thing too is judges will always want evidence for any claims that you have made. So try and back that up wherever you can, whether it's how you've measured something, how you've, if you've got links. Judges are not required to click on any links within your application. Everything needs to be within the application itself, but I guarantee you, if you've made a claim and you provide a link for it, the majority of judges will actually go and check that. They might not read it in depth, but they'll check that, there's a publication or a website or something that backs up a claim that you've made. So do pop those links in there. And again, I'm going to keep stressing this because it happens quite a lot. Make sure that you tailor your applications to the criteria. So there's absolutely no way that you can shoehorn applications within the Green Gown Awards. They just won't be successful. If there isn't a category that suits your project or initiative, the best thing you can do is actually reach out to us, the organisers, and let us know. We always are trying to update our category offering to make sure that we're representing best practice in the sector. But yeah, just trying to shoehorn things, it never really works well, and you'll be frustrated by not progressing, and the judges will be frustrated by reading an application that's not suited to their category. So similarly to what judges love, some things that we see as common feedback points for unsuccessful applicants. First and foremost, number one reason why you will be unsuccessful in any given year is because of the strong competition. As I said, this is an awards. You could have the most amazing project, but something just might have been submitted in the same year as you that's just got a bit higher impact or a bit wider engagement, or there's a lot of reasons why other applications will be successful, and it's really unfortunate. Often in this instance, though, a judge's feedback will be to reapply next year with the same project because they were unsuccessful. And now they can also give you highly commended, and you can still reapply in the next year. If judges tell you to do that, please do reapply. It's amazing how many times we've sent that out as feedback, and we've never seen that particular project or initiative again. A really good example of when it is successful. So last year we had the University of Sydney winning the Creating Impact category. And that was actually an application that they had submitted in the previous year in the same category, which wasn't successful. But the judges said, please reapply next year. The reason why it wasn't successful was because it was around their biodiversity garden, and they had literally just planted it. It was far too soon for them to have any evidence of impact. The judges recognised it was a great initiative. They gave it highly commended, but they said, please reapply next year. Sydney did, and then they got the win last year, and they are now in the international awards with that win. So please do take that feedback on board, because often that's the second point. The reason why things are unsuccessful is because an initiative is just too soon. I know when you launch a new project, you're really excited to get recognition for it. Make sure that you can make those claims of being the first to do it. But often that comes through as just, this is not enough information or evidence to back up the success of what you've done. So judges will often say, this is great, we love it, but please put it in next year. And again, so many times it never comes back. So it's a real lost opportunity there. Other things that come up quite frequently with the judging is lack of impact, or at least lack of evidence impact, and lack of institutional support. So this is where we tend to see things that might be one and done type initiatives that might be great in their own right, but the institution hasn't shown any interest or capability to keep that project going beyond 1 year, or to upscale it across the whole of institutions. So that's often a reason why we see things not progressing as winners. Again, submitting to the wrong category, or not tailoring that application to the category submitted. And another big one is sometimes people don't answer the judge's questions at stage 2, or they don't directly answer the judge's questions. They'll just put in a response of what they think the judges should know and sort of sidestep what the judges have asked. Sometimes the judges will ask really tricky questions, and the only response you can give is, we haven't thought about that, or no, we are not doing the thing you have asked about. If that's the case, you just need to write that and acknowledge it. By ignoring it or sidestepping it, it's just going to frustrate the judges. So big tip there. Couple of other things to consider about, and I might be getting repetitive here, but if that's the case, then just take it as advice that it's really important. Do try to complete all fields within the application form, and remember you're trying to create a narrative and flow throughout the form. So if you've got a really key point that's only going to pop up really at the end of the form and you haven't referenced it anywhere else, that might get missed. You can use subheadings, headings, and bullet points within the application to make it more readable and make it easier to highlight those really important areas. You want to get as much detail in there as you can without lots of waffle. So don't be afraid to use those formatting things in the application form. A really good tip is to think about getting somebody unfamiliar with your project to proof your application so that it makes sense to them without any specific knowledge or prior background. It's easy to think about things in our own bubble sometimes. So I think this is really important. If you can get somebody that's got no context whatsoever to understand what's coming through in your application form, then that's a really good sign. Again, directly answer the judge's questions for stage 2. Don't write what you think you should know, just respond to what they have actually asked. A specific point for those that are considering submitting to the Sustainability Champion staff category. It's really important that you demonstrate efforts above and beyond the role that you are employed in for that category. We get a lot of submissions for people that are employed in sustainability roles that are obviously doing amazing things at their institution, but it is what they have been employed to do. So to be successful in that particular category, you really need to show what you're doing above and beyond what is in your position description. And in regards to students for the student champion as well, if you're going to be involved in lots of sustainability initiatives, that's great, but you need to demonstrate your leadership and your contribution specifically within those categories. Lastly, and this may sound silly, please use spell check. It is crazy how many typos come through on application forms. It's a really simple thing. Just run spell check through before you submit and the judges will appreciate it. My personal top 3, if in doubt, please come back to the criteria. If judges get stuck on selecting a winner in a category, ultimately what we will do is bring them back to the criteria and use that as which application has more closely addressed the criteria. And that is how they will use, sometimes it's really difficult to select a winner for judges, and they might be splitting hairs to come up between a difference between 2 applications. But ultimately, it will come back to which one has addressed the category criteria the closest. For me, get inspiration from the case studies. We've got years and years of case studies available on the Green Gown Awards website that showcase winners. So you get a real feel for what is successful within the program. You can also vet some claims around what's already been done before in the sector. So have a look. There's some great videos, there's some great written case studies. Make sure you check them out. And finally, ask questions. Our team is here to help you. If there's more information you want, if you want us to clarify any of the rules or the conditions of entries, if you've got any questions around your applications, ask us. We don't judge the awards, so we can certainly give you advice on what we think would be best for your application. Just to wrap up from my part, just to note that the deadlines for this year for stage 1 is the 30th of June. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. It will sneak up on you. So do not leave your application to the last day. We will be announcing the finalists, and that will be a notification that you progress to stage 2 on the 2nd of August. And then there's about a month for stage 2 applications to be completed. The awards ceremony this year will be a hybrid event, so there will be an in-person awards ceremony held in Melbourne, where finalists will be invited to come along to, but it will also be streamed, and you'll be able to interact online if you don't want to attend the face-to-face event. So now, to wrap things up, I'm going to pass over to Corey from the University of Tasmania. as I said at the beginning, UTAS is the most highly decorated institution for the Green Gown Awards Australasia, having won numerous awards over the years. And Corey, I dug this photo up from 2012.
When I had hair. Thanks. Good one. Oh, well, you covered that so amazingly well. I would say, from my perception, is I can't stress enough, read the criteria. As Ree has said about 3 or 4 times, understand the criteria for the category and write to that. And make sure that you do fill out every section. You may sound like you're being repetitive, but put the spin on it that section, not spin's wrong word, put the focus on what that section's asking for that's going to be different than the previous section, even if it means you pull stuff out of a different section to put into that. Because at the end of the day, as Reese said, you want to read it as a narrative. Okay, you've got your little summary thing, and yes, that should pop, and your title should be fun and interesting. If at all possible, get it to capture a judge's eye, because it immediately puts them into a positive frame when they start to review the rest of it. But once you get past that sort of abstract or summary, executive summary, make sure that there's a narrative, that it makes sense as you read through it, and it's not excessively redundant and saying the same things over and over again. Find quantitative data, if at all possible. Find quantitative data, put it in little bar charts or pie charts or graphs, because a picture says 1,000 words, which will leave you a lot more space to flesh out other things. Don't be verbose. Don't feel like you need to use 5 sentences to say something you could say in one. That's critically important. I'm an International Green Gown Award judge. And the ones that just do my head in are the ones that are just like, you could have said that in a very succinct way, and it gives you a negative feel for the application, which is what happens. Get quotes from students if that's applicable, or leaders, or outside entities or partners that are real quotes. Don't make them up, and that really empowers that narrative a little bit more. If you're writing it for somebody else, you're highlighting somebody else's effort, and you're trying to bring to fruition some acknowledgement of that. Get them excited about it. Have them review it multiple times for factual errors. They will know it more in depth, and then can make things more succinct for you. Do include links. I know that judges don't have to, and I think we made this point. They do often, and I do. I'll click off just to see if it's real, how long something's been going on or whatever. There's just a bit of information, then it brings you back. Plus, it's a nice break from reading these, because they all kind of start to look the same, and so it gets your mind into another space. Make sure that what you are putting up, if it can be, and it should be, replicable within the sector and more broadly, and really think about that, because that is really important. Because at the end of the day, we want to award things that can go out and make a broader difference and have impact more broadly, and that's why they're getting the award. So I think that's a really important point as well. The stage 2, by all means, what did the judge ask, or what did the judges ask you? Respond to that question. Don't fluff it out with other things. Even if you just say, no additional detail available, at least you're answering the question. And those are some of my big ones, I think, that I would throw out there. But that flow is really important for somebody reading it.
Just a note too on the judges' questions at stage 2. You might not get many times. You might only get one. Take that as a good sign. Don't take it as a bad one. Sometimes judges are like, this is such a comprehensive application. It's fantastic. We don't have any additional questions. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You can still provide update in stage 2 without responding to any judges' questions. So do both if you can. So that's it. Thank you. Thanks for that, Corey. Any questions, please do let me know. I know that there is a question in the chat around, is there a threshold score or number of submissions that move on to stage 2? For example, in a given category, top 20% ranked progress. There is no minimum requirements for there is no maximum number of applications that can progress through to stage 2. It is up to the judge's discretion. We do have a minimum requirement though, so we do need to make a category viable. So if it's a really low category, then most of them will probably move through. But if we have a really popular category, it's up to the judges. Sometimes they will put them all through, because we do see being named as a finalist within the Green Gown Awards as kudos in its own right, because we do have a 2-stage process. So if your application doesn't progress as a finalist, you'll get feedback as to why that was unsuccessful, and maybe you can take that on board for potentially submitting in next year. But yes, not all of them do go through, but judges may say these are all great, we want to put them all through as finalists. That's their discretion. They make that decision. I don't think any other questions have come through on the chat. Were there any? Oh, they've got a raised hand. Sorry, Emma.
Hi, we were just wondering, our initiative is virtual and is behind a login screen for students. So there's not going to be anywhere you can click to see what we've done. Is that going to be an issue? We obviously have the data to support it, but there's nowhere, there's no public webpage where anyone will be able to go to see what we're doing.
As long as you've detailed what's covered behind that wall extensively within the application, I don't see that as being a problem. If you felt that a visual would support the application, there's nothing to stop you from pulling screenshots, if you're allowed to, saving that as a PDF and then linking that with your application.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, I'll take that as a good sign that I've covered everything effectively in the session. We will make this recording available. It will be up on the Green Gown Awards website. I know a lot of people were unable to come to the live session today, so that will be available very shortly. And good luck with your applications. We do know and acknowledge that it takes a lot to pull a Green Gown Award application together. But I've heard feedback from numerous people that say that process in itself can be quite rewarding, to do a stock take on what you're doing within your initiatives and how you're progressing. And it can be really helpful in itself. So I hope that's the case. And we're really excited to see what comes through the awards this year. I think we've had a couple of slow years with the impacts from COVID, and I feel like that momentum is really starting to pick up now. So I'm excited to see what comes through. Thanks, everyone.